Wow, what an honor. The President, the Minister of Defense, echoing the importance of cybersecurity, that is amazing. If only other countries could do the same thing and follow in the same footsteps. It's intensely important. A little bit about my background. I've started several information sharing organizations, information sharing and analysis centers, good friends with the US CERT, DHS, the ICS CERT. I've been a federal regulator in the US. I've also been a utility employee, both in telecom and the electric sector, water space as well. So that's why you should at least get an idea of my background and why you might want to listen. I'm going to talk about threat intelligence, information sharing, and some other myths. It's not that these things are myths. It's that there's some truth to them, but there's also some hype. There's some misunderstandings about the value of these things. So we'll start with kind of setting the landscape. Now, everyone else wants to talk about, your threats, your vulnerabilities. We'll talk about that first, but just make some simple key points up front. The President talked about data, big data, talked about all of these things from a perspective of the value to the country. The value to your organization and the value to you, let's talk about that for a minute. So, for those that are not already a bank, who remembers the day they became a bank? Because you might not consider yourself a bank. Maybe you're something else. You're a software company. Maybe you're a hardware company. Maybe an electric company. You're still a bank. Why? Because your data is your money. Data is money. It really is, it's equivalent at this point. People talk about data being the new gold. I think of it more as data is the new oil because it's kind of got some toxic byproducts, but it's worth a lot. So it effectively is your business. Without data, your business could not operate. And people think, oh, well, we can go back to manual, we can go back to paper. No, you can't. You can't. You can't for maybe a week, maybe hours. Realistically, you just can't do it without data. Data is your business. Data is your money. Google and Facebook make untold billions of dollars off of, I hate my new shampoo. Man, that taco was great. How much is your data worth? It's worth your entire business. It's just that simple. Everything about your business comes down to your data. The bad guys. We always have to talk about the bad guys. Let's just simplify the threat landscape down to the fact that you're outgunned. If they want in, they're getting in. Why? I don't care how much security you've got. I don't care how much you're spending. I don't care what you're doing. They have three things you don't. They have people, they have money, and they have time. And anybody in this room, if you've got all three of those, I want to work for your company because you are the only one that has it. Your adversaries, frankly, have you outgunned. If they want in, they will eventually get in. Part of the problem is humans are notoriously bad at judging risk. We're terrible at this. You look at this from a statistical perspective, and you factor out that visceral human fear component that we react to. We're very reactive to these things. Some of the best statistics I've seen, some of the more interesting ones, you're more likely, on a global perspective, right? Just localizations can be different as you get to small locations, but on a global perspective, you're more likely to be killed by pigs than be involved in any form of a terrorist attack. Are you afraid of pigs on your day-to-day job? No. You're 6 times more likely to be killed by pigs than be involved in a terrorist attack. You should be 6 times more afraid of pigs than terrorists, but you're not. You're afraid of that terrible 12-armed terrorist that's coming to get you. Humans are bad at risk, and we're very quick. We're very good at forgetting the reality of things, the real perception of things. So that sets us up for a very kind of interesting reaction in terms of how we behave with respect to security. So some of the problems we've got, we've set the stage in terms of the value of what your data is to your organization, what the bad guys can do to it, and how you're likely going to react to these things. So the latest and greatest thing, we often throw tools at this because we think if we go out and buy some piece of hardware or piece of software and we fire it up, We turn it on, it's going to solve our problems. The latest one is threat intelligence, and it's a fantastic product. If you don't buy it, then the hackers will come eat your children. This is what you're being told. You must buy this new thing because all of the other things that you bought, they're just not good enough. This must happen. It's got some value, but we'll talk about where that value lies. The first thing is, you don't need any more tools. You just don't. How many tools have you bought lately? Firewalls, IDS, IPS, anything anti-malware, whitelisting, configuration management, honeypots, AI, machine learning, all kinds of training, you name it. You've bought more blinky lights that sit in data centers and just cause heat. Now the real question is, how are you managing those tools? Do you really have the right people driving them? I mean, if you put me behind the wheel of some awesome Bugatti, I'm probably going to wreck the thing. I have no idea how to drive a car that fast. If you don't have the right skills behind these tools, you are wasting your money. Buying more tools may make you feel better, but it may also not necessarily solve your problem. As I mentioned earlier, not only are you outgunned, but you're likely just bringing a knife to a gunfight. Every single one of these tools either has or will be hacked. Every time someone gets through, we look at all of the tools that somehow they got past. They got past multi-factor authentication. They got past our intrusion detection. They got past all of those blinky lights and stuff that we bought and we're not really managing to get to the good stuff. Not saying you shouldn't buy the tools. You still need them, right? But it's not necessarily going to solve the problem. And in reality, the threat intelligence landscape will tell you who is attacking, who is doing what is the current kind of attack style, techniques, tools, and procedures, sources and methods, all this good stuff. Honestly, if they're in my business, I don't care who they are. Get out. I could care less. I don't want to know who they are. I could care less what their tactics are. I'm busy trying to stop the mess from getting bigger. So in a lot of cases, it really doesn't matter who it is, or frankly, what they're doing or how they're doing it. In most cases, by the time the problem has happened, you're in recovery mode, and knowing how they did it doesn't add much value to somehow getting the ransomware off your system or something worse. So what I've seen in reality, my background is primarily critical infrastructures, electric, water, gas, oil, chemical, manufacturing, mining. In these critical spaces, we buy a lot of tools, but there's a lot of antiquated technologies and legacy technologies in there too, so there's only some value we can get out of the newer tools. But what we found in a lot of cases is all the security tools that we've been able to put in place had an unintended use. Now, for the threat intelligence world, it's a lot of the newer tools will match up, for example, network security monitoring, which is a fantastic tool, and yes, another tool you should buy. But it'll match that up with what we're currently seeing out in the wild. If we're seeing something anomalous on your network and we're also seeing it out in the wild, it's likely threat actor, deadly panda, dragon, something. Okay, that's great. But that network monitoring component that was eventually going to be hooked to some external piece that you can correlate and get this visibility, great idea. But in reality, it's that network security component that we actually use, just the monitoring piece. We're seeing a lot of operational technologies. Operations, like literally electric grids, mining operations, gas transmission systems. They're saying, we've never seen this on our network before. What is this? And it's not a security issue, it's an operational issue. Where did that thing come from? Why is it doing this? We're actually getting a lot more operational benefit than just security benefit. And that's one of the bigger values of these tools is it's not just about security. There's actually far more benefit to this than the big giant security umbrella that we're trying to put this under. So in a nutshell, the simplistic perspective here is if you're not locking your doors and windows, you don't need an advanced alarm system. It's just, how many of us, frankly, we've got threat intelligence platforms, but we can't even really patch our systems within 6 months, right? Okay, that's most. If you're gonna leave your car unlocked, don't buy an alarm. It's just a waste of time and a waste of money. And in most cases, it's just going to upset your neighbors. The security basics. You've got to do the simple stuff first. The tool proficiency, as I mentioned. You may have bought a bunch of tools, but are you really using them to their maximum capacity? How many of those tools have overlapping capabilities that you're not really using? How many of the gaps exist in terms of what tools you do have? If you don't have the right person driving that tool, it's going to give you, minimal value, to be honest. We talk a lot about automation. Automate the security process, automate the security tools. If your processes don't work and they fail, then you're going to automate that, and you're just going to fail faster and more accurately. So be careful with automation until you get your processes down. The main thing is, if you're not doing the simple stuff, crawl, walk, run, don't go out and buy these tools that are going to really just be blinky lights in a data center serving up heat. Simplify the problem. 3 key concepts. Zero trust. You've heard a lot about this. This actually is really valuable. Don't trust anything. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust any network. Don't trust any machine. Everything should come with some sort of validation before it gets to do anything on your network. Zero dependence. If you've got critical operations that absolutely must run, they should have zero dependence on anything else around them. We're creating such hyper-connected and hyper-dependent networks that it's like an ecosystem. If you pluck one side of the web, the other side fluctuates and moves. If things truly need to be, if they're that critical and you are dependent upon them for business, they should have zero dependence on anything else. And the last thing is assume constant compromise. I have a lot of organizations that I talk to boards and CEOs, and they say, well, we've never been hacked. It's like, well, how do you know? Are you sure? And I get that, well, maybe, yeah, our security people said so. Okay. Where do they look? How long have they been looking? What are they looking at? What tools do you have? What processes do you have? It's a big question. So the reality is just assume it. Assume you are already compromised. Assume you are in active defense at all points in time. What does this mean? It means you have a very hard job. And it means you're going to be running full steam nonstop. And you've got some very complex problems to solve against some very, very advanced adversaries. That's why you got in the business. Do your job. Don't complain. You know what you're up against. Be innovative, be creative. That's why you're here. And do some amazing things. Okay, let's start. If you're going to start down this path of maturity, and you want to actually use threat intelligence, you want to use information sharing to your best advantage, here's some tips. Land of the blind. Start simple. Assume you know nothing. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. The only person that can see. Start just logging. I know that sounds simple, but there's a lot of places that you're not logging anything. Start with just simple things. And the disk space is cheap these days. I understand, God forbid, just move it to the cloud. It's okay. But we'll hear from someone later about cloud security too. The main thing is, if you don't record it, you can't go back and look at it. You can't analyze what's happening. You have to get some sort of record, so start with that. Monitoring. Just because you're logging it doesn't mean you're actually looking at the logs. We all do that. We might have logs right now. We might already be there, but no one's looking at it. No one's analyzing it. So that's the important part, is if you're logging it, why aren't you looking at it? And if you're not going to look at it, don't log it. Use that space for something else and log something else, so you will look at it. Again, you only find what you're looking for. The next piece is to aggregate as much of that as you can. Now, the important part of aggregation is not just to get everything in one place, but it'll facilitate automation, it'll facilitate tool integration, lots of really good benefits there, but the key part behind aggregation is this is exactly what your attackers are doing. They're aggregating information about you, and then they're inferring what to do next. Hackers rarely know exactly what to do. Hackers guess. They're very good at guessing. This is the same thing you can do with your business. Aggregate all of your data, monitor it, and then start making some inferences. Kind of guess at what might be next in your security profile. So aggregation is hard because you've got to get all of these different tools to talk to maybe some centralized repository. Once you get to that stage, now is when you can really start to run. And you can start using these tools. You can use things like threat intel. You can use things like automation. You're effectively at that maturity level to where you at least are capable. Whether you do or do not use it the right way is up to you. But at least you're capable of doing these things and actually getting value out of it. There's some interesting aspects to once you actually aggregate this much data in one location. Sutton's Law, there's a bank robber in the US called Willie Sutton. And they caught him, and he robbed lots of banks. And they asked him, why did you rob the banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. Makes sense. Where are the attackers going to go? Where the money is. your aggregation point is likely going to be one of your bigger targets. Hanlon's razor, when something goes wrong, Hanlon's razor principle is effectively do not attribute malice to that which can adequately be ascribed by stupidity. Basically, people do stupid things. People do accidental things. Often they don't mean to do it, just accidents happen. Data spills. You have a toxic waste dump of data that shouldn't be out. People do things. It's just how it happens. And of course, data entropy. Anybody that studies physics understands when you collect a bunch of things, the natural state is for those things to run into disorder. So things like data integrity and data management become key. Again, data is key for your business. It's important, but it's also very difficult to manage, and it can also take on a life of its own. So in the monitoring component, monitoring is good, but now let's go into the next piece of actually looking at analysis. So you can run algorithms. You've got mountains of data now. You're mature. You've got all these systems coming into a centralized repository. The next piece is to actually start using your tools to mine through that data and look for things. Now you are at the next level of maturity, right? This is where you can really get advantage of all the things like threat intelligence, info sharing. That's the piece, is looking for things that humans can't see. If you were to manually look at the data that you've got in a system this mature and this integrated, there's just no way you could do it. It's impossible. Use the tools to go through it and look for those things. So let's talk about sharing. Kind of switch a little bit to information sharing. Sharing is a challenge. If anybody has kids, you know exactly what I mean. You can tell them all day long that sharing is, you must share and it's the right thing to do, and don't you like it when people share with you, and none of that stuff resonates with them. They don't care. They want what they want and they do what they do. Humans as adults are pretty much the same way. If they don't see value in it, they won't do it. It's just how humans behave. In some cases, there is what we call mandatory sharing. Information sharing is mandated. So you must share this information with various government agencies or with industry peers. That's not sharing. That's being told to do it. There's a difference. In order for people to share, they have to see value in what they're getting out of the deal. Some people will just share because they're going to share anyway. Most human beings have a hard time with this. When sharing information, there are what I call the trio of trade-offs. There's this standard issue of, do you want it actionable, do you want it accurate, or do you want it fast? You're not going to get all three. You're going to get some mix of that. Typically, you're going to get one of them, because the faster you get it, the lower likelihood that it's something you can really take action on, or that it's accurate. Right? Because you got it right as soon as it was happening. It's still kind of fleshing out all the details. Accurate data takes a long time to refine and vet. That takes the time, so you lose that speed. The actionable component is really, what can I do with this, right? And that is largely dependent upon the information's relevance specifically to you and your maturity to actually do anything about it. So you may receive something that says, do these things. And then you have no way to actually go look for things like indicators of compromise or something else in your logs or in your records or insert anything into your monitoring systems. So one way or another, you're going to receive information in an imperfect way. There is not going to be this like intel feed that is exactly what you need all points in time from every source. It's just not possible. So I haven't given this a name yet, but I should probably give it some sort of like fun axiom name or Miller's Law or something. But the value of the information is inversely proportional to the distribution. What does this mean? The larger the audience, the lower the value of the information. The smaller the audience, the higher the value of information. This is just a natural tendency for information sharing. Think of what Microsoft has to do to issue a security release. They have to do in however many languages that they produce this in, I haven't counted, but they have to get a message out to the entire world that will somehow mean something to your security professionals as well as your grandmother. It's a very difficult challenge, very wide audience. And a lot of that stuff just says, critical. There's not a lot of true value. The security professionals will start digging into the notes, and they'll get to the TechNet, and they'll actually go through and figure it all out. But the average person sees this and they just say, bad stuff, must patch. That's it. That's pretty much it. So Microsoft could probably just say to the masses, bad stuff, must patch. And that would be good enough. Now, for certain organizations, you're part of certain programs, maybe it's the MAPP or others, and you get this information in advance, and you may get it specifically targeted for your industry. That message is to a smaller audience, higher value, because it's that smaller audience. Same thing with, for example, when CERT issues notices, at least I know in the US, I'm pretty sure it's the same here. They can craft messages for specific industries very differently than they can for the entire mass. So understand that when you're either participating in, whether you're feeding or receiving shared information, understand the audience in terms of what it gets in terms of value. So we'll talk about why this is important coming up. Now, part of the compartmentalization piece is you share different information with different channels in different ways. I'm part of various different information sharing organizations. I've had clearance in the US, so I've seen all of the different vehicles where information is shared. And it's amazing to see how the smaller the audience, the more compartmentalized the information is, the higher the value goes. So when your expectations are around information sharing, because everyone says we should just share information, it's going to be great. People in my industry will be able to tell me what they're seeing, and I'll tell them what I'm seeing, and then we can all kind of advance further in the security landscape. I mean, the reality is, it's all going to come in a very different way than that sounds. It's just not this panacea perfection of information sharing. So what we've seen is, in terms of maybe interface with the CERT, is actually go talk to them face to face. Meet your peers face to face. Learn how this compartmentalization stuff works and use it to your advantage. Get inside the compartments so that you can actually advance the information sharing components in both directions. One of the bigger challenges, at least I've known with dealing with most governments, I hope Latvia is different, it's often a one-way street. The industry shares information with the government, and then some information may come back down. Sometimes it takes a long time. But in a lot of cases, there's information shared upstream and it doesn't come back. It does come back if you're part of one of the compartments. That's the key piece, is you've got to figure out how these compartments work, again, because the size matters in terms of the value and distribution. So this one is important. There's various different structures, whether it's the clearinghouse, like Microsoft, or an ISAC or a CERT, that shares information with an entire industry. Or there's the viral method, which is it just gets out and travels through various things, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, social media, you name it. We've found that, and this is actually a real physical principle, this isn't just a guess, information moves through Twitter faster than an earthquake moves across the surface of the Earth. This was measured in California. They actually saw tweets about an earthquake moving through Twitter across the San Francisco Bay Area faster than the earthquake actually hit the people. So if you want to know how fast this information can be spread, faster than the earthquake can hit you. So in terms of sharing information, which method should you use? Yes, you should use them both. Again, understand which compartment works and figure out how that's going to work to your best advantage. Expectations have to be set around, obviously, it's fast, so it might not be accurate, might be moderately actionable, but at least you know about it as quickly as possible, and then you can maybe mobilize some teams to think about this. But the reality is, there are so many different ways that information is shared that when I get the question of how should we share information, I just, yes, all of it. And that's just, well, that doesn't solve the problem. No, actually, it does. Because at least your expectations are set. You need to have ways to receive and send information in every single way possible. It's a challenge, but again, that's your job. So, as I've mentioned, technology will fail. Hackers will eventually get through the tech. Maybe they'll exploit the people, whatever it takes. So instead of, AV, AI, ML, IDS, IPS, you need an APS. You need an aware person system. Most important part of your security team. People. Technology will only go so far. People enabled with technology can go much farther. aware people who know whom to contact at the right time and whom to receive information from at the right time and from where are far more advanced and will do much better. So in reality, as a security professional, all the tools you've got, all the processes you've got, all the money that you've spent, it's still going to come down to you. That's a reality. It's still on your shoulders, no matter what. What also means is that in the company next to you, it's coming down to them too. The person next to you in the chair, it's coming to them. It is ultimately all on the people. This is why information sharing is actually key, because you still have to talk to each other. You still have to actually advance security through each other's use. So in the event that something bad happens, I got to say, I would know who to call. And it's because I've taken the time to get to know my government agencies, my CERT, my ISAC, all my service providers, manufacturers, media, believe it or not, all of these things come into play in a situation where you actually need to communicate quickly, you need to communicate well, and you need to respond well. Because at the end of the day, if everything fails and you have to do something, it's going to be on you. It's going to be on your shoulders. You're not alone. So these are all the organizations that can help. They're going to help in unique ways. They're going to help in creative ways. If you don't have these relationships built in advance, then you will likely end up struggling. So how do you get this far? As mentioned earlier, thank you so much, Baiba. The trust is key. Relationships, with trust, you build relationships first. Then trust happens. Then you will likely start sharing. Then you might actually get some actionable results out of the sharing. And then you can get to a state where you are more resilient, because again, you're not just relying on the technologies, you're actually using the technologies and the humans together to help you be resilient. Key difference in resilient versus secure. Resilience is your ability to operate through it, because in reality, you're not going to stop it from happening. If someone wants you, you're going to get hit. So how do you operate through it? People. The machines will not operate through it. They will go down. They may just, look at Wiper. You may end up with bricks. And it really is just down to you. Ransomware does the same thing. So my approach to this is basically, I don't care if it's beer, coffee, wine, tea, whatever you want, take them out. The most valuable thing you could do is the least expensive. Buy someone a beer. Get the information started. Start talking. Build the trust. Build the relationship. You're at this event for a reason. You're here to learn some security things. The side benefit that is always there, and everyone knows about it, is the networking component. If you don't share at least 3 business cards before you leave, you failed. Serious. Get to know people. Start exchanging business cards right now if you want. I don't care. That is the most important part of this event, is it's going to come down to you and your connections to solve the problem. So if you would like the resilience component, you're going to end up with this piece on the other side. You have to start with the relationships. You are not going to be resilient alone based on technology, and you're not going to be resilient alone based on some sort of threat intel or pieces that you get. It's going to come down to you leaning on people inside your organization, peer organizations, with the CERT, you name it. So when all else fails, it takes technology and people. So think about it. What relationships have you built? Would you really know what to do? Right now, if, let's pick the flavor of the day as if ransomware came through and just wiped out your organization. Where would you start? Typically, you got to call someone. The executive team is going to want some answers. They're going to want to tell the media something. Ask companies like, Norsk Hydro and Maersk and massive multinational companies that have been severely crippled by ransomware. What kind of communications did they start? They immediately went to the media and let the media know what's going on in terms of transparency, at least the good ones that have done this the right way. Internally, they communicated what to do with the technology and immediately mobilized the people. There are some organizations that if they went to mobilize the people, they couldn't do it. Is that your organization? If management came down to mobilize people to manual processes, is that something you could do? It may come to that. Again, communication, trust, sharing. It's not just externally with you know, CERT, with government agencies, with your manufacturers, internally in your own organization as well. So you have to think about this. When things go bad, it's still going to come down to people and relationships. So I stress the fact that we often come at this from a security perspective. We're here as security professionals, and we take the big security knob and we turn everything to off, and the users all scream, and then we back it off a little bit, back it off a little more, and then finally they stop screaming enough to where we'll set it there. And our job is to basically say, no, you can't do that. I would argue that your job as a security professional is to allow the organization to take as much risk as they possibly can without going broke. Because most of us work for companies that need to make money, and they want to make more money. It's a challenge for us as security professionals because we want to tell them, no, you can't do that. Your answer is, yes, you can do that if you understand the risks. It's their job to accept those risks and move forward. That's a very different situation for us to think about as security professionals. Frankly, executives don't care about security, they care about resilience. They want to make sure that they can operate through a situation, they can effectively communicate to the media and the customer base or partner base that things are going to be okay. That's what they want. They don't want no. They don't want ultra secure. They could care less. They want to still operate, still make money, and take as much risk as they possibly can without basically going broke. That's a different mindset for a security professional. So, if you would like more money, more resources, more humans, take security out of the talk. Talk about business value. Talk about resilience. This is a key component. Use the security tools to enhance the operations. Show them things they've never seen about their own systems and their own network. Become part of the business risk solution versus we're stopping the users from doing bad things solution, because users are going to be users. It's your job to clean up their mess, unfortunately. So in terms of threat intelligence, information sharing, all the tools that you buy, all the practices that you put in place, all the automation, all those things should not just be focused on, are we more secure today than we were yesterday? Am I delivering the business resilience to the best of our ability? That's a different mindset. All the tools, everything else can lend itself toward this. And these are some terms that I've got up here that management loves. One of the key pieces is actuarial data. If I eat red meat every day, no vegetables, drink a lot of whiskey, never exercise, I'm probably going to die by 40 or 50. And that's not just a guess. We know this. We know this because we have years and years, in some cases hundreds of years of actuarial data. What does that mean? We've tracked human health over all the years, and we have this mountain of data that we're working from to, again, infer based on aggregation what will happen. This actuarial data we don't have in the security space. This is what you get with the level of maturity we've talked about with the tool sets, the logging, the monitoring, those components. You actually get real data about your environment. You can compare that data with external data once you're at that level of maturity with the threat intelligence components. What that tells you is you're not guessing anymore. You have hard data to prove these things are happening inside, these things are happening outside. This is what we can infer based on what we're seeing on the outside world. Without that data, you're just guessing. You're hoping. You're not basing it on math, you're not basing it on science, you're basing it on a hunch. And you might be a fantastic security professional, but when you go to management, they're going to want numbers. This is the fastest way to get them numbers. Get that data. Get real data to come back with and show them actuarial data. These are our risks, quantified. It gets a lot more money and a lot more time and a lot more resources. Operational efficiency. Security can enhance operations. You can actually get things like you can reduce mean time between failures. You can reduce downtime. You can increase efficiency through operational practices by minimizing things like network noise. There's all kinds of other additional value that you can deliver to the organization that's just, it is security, but you're not calling it security. It's a different mindset. Reduce risk, that's important, obviously. Risk landscapes for management is key. Think about this also in terms of cybersecurity insurance. One of the biggest components for most organizations is their insurance, especially for larger organizations or critical infrastructure. I can only imagine trying to insure a massive generation facility or a massive mining operation, for example. It's insane the amount of insurance they pay. So, for example, if I have cybersecurity insurance and I've got some ransomware, I'm going to go to my insurance agent and I'm going to say, I got this ransomware. We need some insurance. We need basically some recovery. And the first thing they're going to ask is, well, what cybersecurity practices did you have in place? Was this an act of war? Was it a nation-state issue? Those are all questions you're going to have to ask in terms of reducing that overall risk landscape, especially when it comes to insurance. And the last piece is resilience. Again, you're not thinking about this in terms of security. It's not about stopping something from happening. It's about operating through it. The threat landscape is going to change every day. The adversaries are going to change every day. The vulnerability is going to change every day. Stop trying to chase that and somehow tell management that you're more secure today than you were yesterday. Because in reality, are you more capable of dealing with an issue today than you were yesterday? That's a much different perspective, and it's going to take you a lot further than some security metric that says, you know, we stopped this many hits on the firewall, and we've had this many anti-malware hits, and this kind of thing. Those metrics aren't as valuable as your capabilities in terms of your ability to respond. Okay. So some lessons learned. Kind of summarize a bit. Someone wants your things, and you probably can't stop them. If they want your stuff, they're going to get it. That's just, was talking with Kieran earlier about social engineering. We were joking about success rates, and it's 100%. It's not 75, it's not 25, it's 100%. We've actually had, we've done some social engineering exercises where people gave away legitimate user IDs and passwords for a candy bar. We were offering them a candy bar, and we would ask them a survey of security questions, and the last question was, would you give away your corporate user ID and password? 25% hit rate for a candy bar. The company that we were engaged with had spent millions of dollars on security and was circumvented by a 50-cent candy bar. It's Hershey's with almonds. It's not even a good candy bar. But yes, chocolate is worth more to some people than your corporate assets. Humans will do things. If that's the only path in, then you've done a good job, right? You've actually secured your organization to a state where they're breaking the humans instead of everything else that you've done. But the main thing is, you've got to understand that you are likely already compromised. Again, think about that, simplify it, just assume that bad things are already happening and start from there with the zero trust model. You already have too many tools and not enough people. And you probably know this, but this is, I can't echo this enough. It still takes people. I don't care how many pieces of technology you have and how many blinky lights you have, how well the software is integrated, it's the people that still matter. Because the technology, someone will get around it. I mean, every incident we've seen, it's because the technology didn't stop it before it got to that stage. So eventually, focus on the people first and hire more people. I know it's harder, but again, that's where you can go to management with those top pieces I talked about, get more money for humans. And hopefully you can use the tools that you have the best way possible. Master basic security practices before you do anything else. If you are not doing the basic stuff, don't waste your time on threat intel. It's great, but you need to be at the right stage to use it. And honestly, even information sharing, if someone did share something really juicy with you that was specifically targeted to you, and you didn't even know enough about your environment to do anything, like if someone said, wow, someone is attacking our industry this way against this type of tech, and your answer is, I don't even know if we have that kind of tech, you're not going to get far. You have to understand simple things. Asset inventory. Do you even know everything you've got? Would you know if that was a problem? If you're not doing asset inventory, stop. Do that first. Then think about security. It really is that simple. Don't buy anything else until you do the basic stuff first. Otherwise, it's just wasting your money. And spend that money on people, because you're going to get a lot further with them instead. Preparing takes time. It's going to take some resources, some network design. If you're actually going to do this right and mature your organization to a place where you can effectively use info sharing and threat intel, it takes all kinds of work. It's very hard. I mean, I made it sound simple by just start logging and then start monitoring and then aggregate. Even the logging component can be challenging. Some devices may only have X amount of time or storage capacity, or they don't like syslog, you never know. Then getting it to a stage where you can aggregate it and monitor, well, that's in some cases takes span ports, network re-architectures. These are expensive propositions. I understand that, so don't think that's lost on me, but it still must be done. This is all of the hard grunt work that's got to get done before you can expect any of these fantastic tools to do what they are supposed to do well. As I mentioned, log, monitor, analyze. The piece that is key on this is once you get to that stage and you've got all this awesome intel about your own organization, then you can share. You've got valuable stuff to share. And you can receive information, and it's much more useful to you as well. So that's when sharing really has its true value, is at that level of maturity. Otherwise, again, you're still kind of guessing. And in a lot of cases, I've seen organizations that were not mature that began to share that actually caused confusion because it actually made the situation worse. So be mindful, if you're not mature enough, be careful in terms of how you participate. Again, you're not ready for it. And that's a hard thing to swallow. It's some realization that is necessary on the inside, but it's valuable in terms of the community base. Make sure you're adding value where you can and receiving value where you can. Know who to trust when things go wrong. Obviously, that means building the relationships. I can't stress it enough. It's the cost of a cup of coffee, a beer. It's okay. Go out, make friends. I know for a lot of security professionals, we're introverts, and about as extroverted as we get is maybe looking at their shoes instead of our own. That's understood. In some cases, you got to get past that. You got to make some friends. You got to start building some relationships. That is the most important thing in your entire career will be your professional network. Who you know, not just to advance your career, but in the event that something goes wrong. What if you need to just validate something? Man, I heard this. Are you seeing this too? And someone you trust because you've known them, you know their skill set, and you know who they know, comes back and says yes or no. The value of that is worth far more than getting a response or something from Microsoft. It's huge. So building that human connection, that's why you're here. I can't stress it enough. Make friends. It's the most important part of your job. And then again, you are not going to get far in management if you just talk about security. You've got to talk about delivering real business value to the organization. All those connections that you make, one of the first questions I've always gotten from management, no matter what layer of management it is, what is everyone else doing? They want to know, what are my peers doing? What are my competitors doing? You can guess. You can maybe go to Gartner and commission a report, or you can call someone that you know and get an answer. Which is going to be faster, cheaper, more effective? Call on someone you know. If you don't know them, you're guessing. Most important part, that is going to give you more business value than anything else. All right. Contact information, should you like to reach me? I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, all the standard social channels. And any questions?
Yes, there are.
Good. Fantastic.
So first of all, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, microphone, yes. Thanks. I think it was very, very good first talk for us to start reevaluating what we have and what we don't have from the list you've been mentioning. And the first question that I have is the following. Patrick, humans are the ultimate source for the data creation as well as for its analysis. Mm-hmm. How this critical human resource can be better harnessed and managed to improve the quality of data and its assessment?
A fantastic question.
Yes.
Hardening humans, you know, training goes a long way, and I would argue that that's some of the best money spent is training, awareness. I would say more or less, people hate training. I gotta say, people don't like training. How many times do you see, security training, I gotta take it seriously. And you wait till the last day, and then you read it and you ignore it. Has anyone actually read like their, policy, their cyber security policy at work? I mean, anyone actually read it? Okay, anyone read it that didn't write it?
We have lights in the room.
Yeah, in reality, we might have read it, but we forgot about it. We don't really know what it says. Most humans just don't care. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I found that the most effective way is through awareness, and you might not like this, but treat it like marketing. You are selling security to them. You're selling good behavior and you're selling good practice. And if they don't think there's value to them, they're not going to do anything about it. They don't care. They're going to give away your security for a candy bar. So humans are the weakest link, but they're also the strongest link. And that's where that aware person system comes into play. The more educated and aware your people are, I've been in critical infrastructure installations, and the security people didn't notice anything. But an operator of this giant rotating piece of machinery came up and said, I think my machine's acting weird. It just sounds weird. I don't like the way it sounds. And they went in and investigated and found out that someone had actually modified the set points and allowed it to vibrate just enough to where it would actually break. Now, we don't know if this was a competitor or a nation state, but it was not caught by any of the security tools. It was caught by somebody that said, my machine sounds weird. I'm going to go talk to security. So it's more or less how quickly can you respond, what to look for, and why is that of value to you. But I agree, the humans are the weakest and best link. So turn them more toward that best link through awareness. Don't force training down their throat because they're going to hate it. Market it to them. Tell them why it's important to them. Sell it to them like marketing. Make them just want it.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the floor? Maybe more lights so that we can see if there's any.
Now they're going to be shy. They're not going to ask questions with the spotlight's on. You can turn the lights off and let them yell out
still.
questions if you want.
Yes, there is a hand in front.
Bernard.
Just wait a minute. Agnes is coming.
Mike on the way.
Thank you for the wonderful speech.
Thank you.
Sometimes the organizations learn about they've been hacked from social network. Mm-hmm. And social networks currently enable us to share this information really fast. Like you put with a single push of a button, like you like it, retweet it, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Would these social networks at the current state could be treated as national critical infrastructure? Because that's kind of a backbone for information flow, maybe.
I hadn't thought of that. Yes. Short answer, yes. Yes. I'm thinking of all kinds of, there's civil defense communications, your utilities communicate that way, telecom, they all communicate this way now. So I would say yes. And maybe an attack on a social media platform might also constitute an attack on critical national infrastructure as well. Therefore, that leads into all kinds of interesting legal issues around misuse, terrorist acts. Okay, but excellent idea, excellent concept. We need to talk about that more.
Anyone else?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi.
Where? There we are.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm Carlos with CERT.LV, and my question is like on the continuation of the one, but the previous question regarding like why are we so bad in teaching security and the security training? As you said, like pretty much nobody likes their security training. Mm-hmm. Why? I mean, theoretically it would be possible to make a great security trainings that everybody would enjoy, but apparently...
as a user, you're stopping me from doing what I want to do. I want to go to that website, I want to install that software, I want to click that link, I want to see that video of me that just got shared by somebody I don't know, right? Humans we want to do those things. Security training to them is a list of things that I can't do.
Well, maybe we should give candies out after the security training.
Right. That's what I'm saying is I've seen better approaches. I've actually seen organizations go through a massive cultural transformation when they actually go out and literally hire a marketing firm and attach them to the security group and do the organizational transformation effort, the organizational change effort. And it's a big deal, and it costs a fair amount of money for organizations of size, but they absolutely transform the organization. Especially in critical infrastructure, we see this in the safety mindset where every single person knows safety is part of their job, and they take it very seriously because people can die. They did a lot of the same thing where they used similar vehicles, similar messages for security, and included a security minute in front of every meeting, and it was more about personal security. It wasn't so much about corporate security. It made it resonate with them personally, and that seemed to get the highest degree of traction to make them think about, oh, well, if that might hurt me, it might also hurt the company too. I probably shouldn't do that. So it's more or less what do they say? Culture eats process for breakfast. Changing human behavior is the hardest part of the job. So I would say the most effective way we've seen humans move is through marketing. It's a terrible answer, but it's a reality. You got to sell it to them in a way they want to hear it.
Okay, I have last question from online. You were talking about private business, but what about local governments where money and workforce is limited? For example, everyone is a jack of all trades. and there are very few specialized workers. So how to approach these things there?
Another fantastic question. We do a lot of work with municipalities, and they are always in a tight spot. In many cases, they're elected officials, and the elected officials don't want to raise taxes or raise anything else that might impact their ability to be reelected. It's a terrible self-feeding cycle. The reality is they're always going to be in a tough situation. I don't have an easy answer for them. I've seen some municipalities, we've seen this in the US, Canada, some places in Europe, where they'll go through what's called a mutual assistance approach, where you as security professionals agree to donate some of your time in the event that something bad happens. Or you may even show up and do some training. You may show up and do some check-ins, some analysis. We've even seen some companies will pool resources where you get credit through either ISACA, ISSA, you name it. There's various different ways where you get additional CPEs or benefit by donating your time to do analysis. And they'll give you a virtual cloud login. You can log in and do some analysis of things. So pooling resources and looking for creative and innovative options are unfortunately their only approach. I don't see a silver bullet for them at this point.
That's a good direction. And although I said it's a last question, there is another very good one. So is Europe far behind the US in IT security questions, or are we pretty much on the same level? Can you say anything about that?
Oh, good. Another really good question. Packets don't have boundaries. Packets don't care about oceans. They don't care about boundaries. They don't care about countries or politics. Technologies in a lot of cases, Facebook, Microsoft, Red Hat, they don't care either. ABB, Honeywell, Siemens, Rockwell, Harris, they don't care about boundaries. We're all buying our technology from the same companies, and we're all using basically the same practices. So no one is necessarily any more advanced than anybody else. The only difference I'm seeing is the regulatory landscape, where some countries are mandated to do certain things and others aren't. Be careful. I'm a former regulator. I'm a recovering regulator. I've done this. It can have unintended consequences. So be very careful with regulation. Make it slow. Fast regulation is always bad regulation. Take it slow. Take your time. Do it in the right places. Market incentives with regulation at the same time. The carrot and stick approach, far more effective. In terms of kind of regionalized advance, it's roughly the same. The only difference is regulations. But be careful with regulation. It can backlash.
Okay, with this, let's thank Patrick for the very insightful,
thank you so much.
Interesting talk.
Beautiful Riga.